Thank you for watching this recording of our live Q&A with the Deans. I'm your host, Tabitha Canalda, and I am the Associate Director of Admissions and Outreach at Ave Law. Please feel free to contact us at info@avemarialaw.edu. Enjoy! Dean Miller, this next question is for you. How should new students approach law school?
So how do you approach law school? Well, you have to be ready to really put in the time. Law school is an endeavor where you are getting ready to join what I will call a noble profession. I did practice law, so I consider it very noble, and I practiced in a way where I really took care in how I treated and worked with my clients. So that being said, when you're starting the endeavor of learning the law to begin your vocation, it happens the minute you walk through the door. So you need to be ready to put in the time so that you can fully be able to take in the law and be able to be the best student and then future practicing attorney. I liken going to law schools, particularly in your first year, like learning a foreign language. And if you really want to master a foreign language, you need to immerse yourself in the language in an area where, you know, that's all they do is speak that language. The law is something you need to immerse yourself in because it's a new way of thinking. It's a new vocabulary that you need to look up as you go. And so you need to really take the time, be willing to put in the time, be present in the classroom, not just physically on a screen or physically in the classroom, but physically and cognitively, and thinking through what your answer would be if someone else is being called on. So my short answer is be ready to immerse yourself in the practice of law. It will pay off tenfold because you will never think the same even after one semester of law school because of the way that you use critical thinking skills. Long answer, short question.
Okay, Dean Seepley, this next one is for you. What do we mean by active learning and why is it important?
Okay, well, first of all, welcome. I'm Kevin Seepley, the President and Dean of Ave Maria School of Law, and I'm in my 6th year of being the Dean here, and very proud of the school. As far as active learning, really, in my mind, it means really employing the most recent knowledge as far as the science of learning. And what we found out in the science of learning, how people actually learn as opposed to how we thought that they learned, is to make them be very active in the process. And that's particularly true when we're talking about a graduate level school, such as law school. And you have to be very active in the learning process itself. And so what I tell students is get out of the passive modality of learning. And what do I mean by that? Passive modality of learning is really just sitting there and having people feed you the information. And the more you can get out of that and the more you can be in charge of your own learning, the better off you're going to be. So first of all, instead of just sitting there, when someone is called on in class and it's not you, actually answer the question. Don't sit there and listen to one of your peers answer the question. Because there's a big difference between you being able to retrieve the information and recognizing the information. And the more you can put yourself into an active retrieval mode, that is, you are reaching back in your brain and you're coming up with the answer yourself, the better you're going to retain that information. There's a couple ways to do this, in not just answer the question, but also to self-quiz yourself and self-test yourself with a practice test, even before you're ready, even before you truly know the information. There's a testing effect, is what it's called, and that is, it's a formative process. It forms you. It's not just an evaluative process, not just to evaluate you, but to form you. And so you take tests by yourself or with your study group before you're even ready for the test, and it's part of the learning process. And what I advise our students to do is to make up, one, you can get lots of quizzes and lots of practice tests, but even better would be to make up your own tests, because as you're making up a test, see how that kicks you out of the passive modality of learning, puts you into an active modality of learning. Now you have to figure out What is a good question here? What rule am I trying to test on this question? What facts will be important? What facts won't be important? What is the issue? And what would I think to be a good answer here? And you give that to one of your peers, and your peers takes the test, and then the two of you talk about the test. That's an example of really getting active in the learning process, making a question, thinking through the question, discussing the question, and learning from that process. Much, much better than simply rereading something, listening to something, having people feed you the information.
Thank you, Dean Seifley. Next up, we have Dean Lucas Ross. When should I start working with the Office of Professional Development? How soon?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Jennifer Lucas Ross. I am the Associate Dean of Professional Development and Alumni Affairs. So as to when 1L should begin to work with the Office of Professional Development, you may have or may have not heard of guidelines. There used to be NALP guidelines that indicated that 1Ls really were not permitted to speak to the career services and professional development offices until November 1st of their 1L year. While those guidelines are no longer in force, last year NALP ended those, we still strongly recommend that you wait until after your midterms in your first semester, your 1L year, to come to the Office of Professional Development for individual counseling. You will actually hear from me during your orientation. I will be part of the orientation presentation. During that time, I will give you a small assignment to do between when I meet with you at orientation and when we begin counseling. And then in October, we will have training sessions. We invite all the 1Ls. We actually mandate them to come and meet with the Office of Professional Development in small groups. And it's at that point that we share with you some information and encourage you to begin your counseling so that you can begin your job search.
Thank you. The next question is for Dean O'Keefe. Dean O'Keefe, are scholarships still available for late applicants?
Yes, we still have scholarships available. We're pretty generous with our scholarships that we give out each year. And so we do take into account that we do have some late applicants during the summer in the June and July months. So there are scholarships available, and I would certainly still encourage you to apply and not worry about that at this point in the game.
Thank you, Dean O'Keefe. The next question is for Dean Milliron. Dean Milliron, can you touch a little bit on how important professionalism is day one of law school and how that can affect your life after law school?
I was the only person who was remiss in fully introducing myself. My name is Maureen Milliron. I'm the Dean of Academic Affairs at Ave Maria School of Law. Welcome to all of you. This really dovetails off what I was saying earlier in the sense of you're entering into a noble profession. This isn't like undergrad. This isn't like even in my mind going to graduate school and getting a graduate degree, let's say in philosophy or English. You're entering into a profession from the day you walk through the door. So it is important that you respect what's going on in the classroom, respect your professors, respect your colleagues, and respect, well, I said that to an extent, the process. First of all, it's important in the sense that you are already starting to build your reputation as an attorney the minute you walk through the door. I remember that one of my fellow colleagues, one of my fellow students in law school reached out to me after law school because of how hardworking I was to work with him on some research he was doing relative to some evidence issues. And I've had cases referred to me consistently when I was practicing from people that were my fellow students. That's only because they saw my work ethic and I think witnessed my integrity in terms of how I held myself in law school. So I think professionalism is important in that respect. Professionalism is also important through law school and how you carry yourself in law school and outside of law school with regard to being able to be licensed. There is, you have to pass that portion of the bar, character and fitness, and how you behave can factor into it. Not everything factors into it, but obviously things that are done wrong that are maybe on the extreme can be factored in. I hope that covers all the bases, at least minimally for now.
Yes, thank you. Dean Lucas Ross, if I am an out-of-state student, is that going to affect my chances of getting an internship? Will you be able to help me find an internship out of state?
The answer to that is yes, absolutely. Now, for internships that are out of state, obviously those would be internships that occur over the summer. There are very few instances where students would have an internship out of state during the fall or spring academic year. However, we do work with our alumni base. We have alumni in, I think we're up to 48 states throughout the country. We work with them for internship opportunities. We have employers that we know in states, usually in areas like DC, New York, Michigan, Texas. We have employers that we work with fairly regularly that we can assist students with getting an internship in one of those states. We also provide counseling and guidance. We have materials, guidebooks to assist students with starting their own job search in another state. For instance, over the Christmas break, you can begin reaching out to employers, and we provide you some guidance and counseling on that as well.
Awesome, thank you so much. Dean Siepley, this one's for you. Can you tell me a little bit about our bar prep programming?
Sure, yes. Yeah, I think we do have the most aggressive bar prep program in the country. If it's not the most aggressive, it certainly is as aggressive as any law school in the country. And it really starts out when students deposit, we send them a Surface Pro computer, and we load up on that computer spatial learning software. And again, that goes back to the fact that we're trying to be on the cutting edge of learning science here at the school. And spatial learning software basically takes information and tests you on the information. And if you know the information and you have a high confidence level on that information, then it will be longer before it tests you on that same information again. If you don't get it right, or you don't have high confidence, then it will repeat that information to you until you learn it. And so it just tries to tap into that science of how we learn and test you in those ways. So in the first year, from the very first time you actually deposit and you get the Surface Pro, we start with that bar prep, start getting you ready for the massive amount of information that you're going to need to know for the bar. After the first year, if you find yourself in the bottom half of the class, then we actually do funnel those individuals in the bottom half of the class. They have to take 2 courses in the second year that helps them with bar prep. And then in the third year, everybody has to take ALA, which is Advanced Legal Analysis. And it's a 4-credit-hour course. It's a very difficult course. You have to pass it to graduate. And it prepares everybody for the multi-state bar examination, which every state in the country uses except for Louisiana. And you also have to take an essay course that prepares you either for the Florida portion of the bar exam, or if you're going to take a bar exam not in Florida, it prepares you for the essay portion of the state portion of the bar. And then once our students graduate, the fees already cover paying for their bar prep course, that is either Kaplan or Barbary. But right after graduation, we have a 7-day boot camp where our students, this is before the bar prep, commercial bar prep period, where they go through and again, focus on the multi-state bar examination, which is the hardest part of the bar examination. And then we have 14 workshops that coincide with the Barbary and the Kaplan program. So let's say you had contracts in the morning with Barbary, in the afternoon for our students only, we run a workshop on contracts, and we also feed our students lunch if we're doing it on campus. You know, right now, I'm not sure we're gonna have a Florida July bar exam, but if we do, we'll be doing our workshops virtually. But in the future, it'll be on campus. And then the last 3 days after the bar prep period is over with the commercial bar prep, we do another 3-day boot camp focusing on the MBE. So we have a great staff in our bar preparation section with Professor Buscaglia and Professor College, and they are here for our students. And we also have a tutor that we hire that we make available to some of our students as well. So we do an awful lot for bar prep.
Thank you, Dean Seepley. This next question is for Dean O'Keefe. Dean O'Keefe, how important is the personal statement?
Okay, so that's a great question. For my late applicants out there, as you're working on your law school application, I encourage you to take great care with your personal statement. So when you think about it, your application is all very factual. It's going to give me addresses and where you've lived and where you've worked and schools that you've attended, but it's all very factual. It doesn't really tell me a whole lot about you as a person. So your personal statement is your opportunity to tell us what it is about you that's going to add to our learning community. Why do you want to be an attorney? And I will say one caveat to that, to tell a law school admissions officer that the reason you want to go to law school is because your parents have told you that since a very early age you've been great at arguing, not necessarily the best way to go. While it may be true, it's not really going to be compelling for us. So I want you to think about it on a little bit deeper level. You know, for instance, are there obstacles that you've overcome? Is there a particular situation in your life that you witnessed that, you know, made you really think that you want to go to law school? You know, maybe you came across an individual who had really been wronged by someone, something, and it really made you think about how important it is to be able to go out and to represent individuals. Perhaps you want to go make a change in some aspect of the world, you know, whether it's pro-life, it could be working for, you know, a lot of public interest folks. You know, we have the farm workers out in Immokalee. We've got clinics where, you know, people are out there helping those folks. So perhaps it's something like that that led you to law school. That will be very, very important to me as the reader to kind of get an indication of what you are as a person and what you'll bring to our learning community. And as I say, you know, we're always looking for diversity. Diversity, you know, could be race, religion, diversity of thought, diversity of experiences. So all of that is really going to give me a good idea of what you will be able to add to our community. And as an aside, I just want to add, if you are the late applicants and you are working on your application and still planning on taking the LSAT, get your application in ahead of time. That will save us time in the long run, because if you wait until your LSAT score hits to start your application process, you're going to be running really late in the cycle and right up against potentially the admissions deadline. So I would strongly encourage you to get your application in, get all that information together, so that when that score hits, your application will become complete. We'll be able to review it in its entirety, and it'll save a couple of weeks for you. Absolutely, for sure.
Perfect. Thank you, Dean O'Keefe. This next question is for Dean Lucas Ross. What is the difference between an externship and an internship, and what are our externship opportunities at AVE?
So the difference between an externship and an internship is an externship is an internship for academic credit. An internship is often a paid opportunity, but an externship, instead of payment, you receive academic credit. There's a classroom component to it as well. We have many opportunities for externships at Ave Maria School of Law. There are local employers that we work with regularly who offer opportunities, usually every semester, government employers such as the U.S. Attorney's Office in Fort Myers, the state and federal courts in Fort Myers, State Attorney's Office, State Attorney General, Public Defender's Office, several legal aids, Department of Children and Families. These organizations hire Ave Maria School of Law students as externs for the spring, for the fall, and for the summer semesters. We also have many private employers. They will change year by year depending on the private employer's needs, but we have many of those who offer summer opportunities mostly. including in-house counsel, externship opportunities, private law firms in all areas of law. And the law school assists you in finding those opportunities by running an on-campus recruitment program. We run one in the fall and one in the early spring, and students can participate in that, get all of their application documents in through my department, and then my department works on sending those to the employers and works on setting up interviews and connecting students with their summer positions.
Thank you, Dean Lucas-Ross. And the last question that I have is for Dean Siepley. Dean Siepley, what makes our school unique?
Well, I think the biggest thing is really two things. Number one, we're the most devout Catholic school in the country. And number two, the community of the school. So when I talk about being the most devout Catholic school in the country, this is a place where students of faith can come and practice their faith as a safe harbor. We do hold a close fidelity with the Catholic teachings and the Catholic Church. So if that is what you're comfortable with, or if that's what you're looking for, this is definitely the best school in the country for that. Secondly, and it really is hand in hand with the first, and that is we're a great community. All the deans that are here tried to know the students by their first name, and we try to know the students as opposed to just the student being a number here. We try to really walk the talk, that everybody that comes here is not just a number, but actually a person, an individual, a unique individual that we are trying to cultivate them to become an exceptional attorney, both in law, but also in morals, and being able to carry out a professionalism that distinguishes them from other lawyers in the community. And to create that kind of tight-knit community, it's something that we have to work on each and every day. So we talk about it as a staff, we talk about it as a faculty, and we're really trying to, if we're not in communion with the Catholic Church, and if we're not creating an exceptional environment here, then we're failing in our mission, because that's what distinguishes our school from every other law school in the country. So we try to be exceptional in those two areas. And in addition, obviously, we work hard on our academics, but every law school in the country does that. And with the ABA as an accreditor, pretty much the academic program at every law school is very similar. And so you just need to look at, do I fit into the community? And I guess now that I'm thinking about it, one really unique thing with our school is we have a campus. So most law schools are on a campus of another school, but they're one building. We actually are just a law school, and we have a 12.5-acre campus, a beautiful campus 6 miles away from the beach, 5 major buildings, well, now 6 with a wellness center. So we have our own brand new wellness center that has only been used for 2 weeks because we had to shut down for the virus. So I would say, and that probably fits in with the community as well, because our students live, 1/3 of our students live on campus. That's also extremely unique for a law school. Most law schools don't have their own housing. We have 2 residence halls and 8 villas that are duplexes. And so that brings another aspect that feeds into what I talked about before as far as being a tight-knit community.
Thank you, Dean Siepley. Okay, so that wraps up my questions, that portion of the Q&A. So now we're gonna open it up to you guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to type it into the Q&A box, and I will be reading it to everyone. We're gonna reserve the last half hour for your questions. So the first question I have here is from an anonymous attendee. You'd like to know, how long after our application has been in the completed status should we expect to hear? This question seems like it'd be for Dean O'Keefe.
Was after it goes into completed status, how long? So typically we're running, once it goes complete, we're running probably about 3 weeks from that point for a decision. Now, it may go into committee review. You may be asked to contact us to do our interview program. But once you go complete, within, I would say, 2 or 3 weeks, we will be moving on your application in some way, shape, or fashion. So maybe interviewing, maybe committee, further review, or a decision. And we are moving pretty quickly these days because we're getting, towards that point in the admission cycle. So we are working pretty quickly on those decisions.
Perfect. Thank you, Dean O'Keefe. This next question is from Maria Cardenas. What resources are available for first-generation minority students?
I can address that. So we do have a very active and robust academic support division of our faculty. We have 3 individuals in there that are exceptional, and their expertise is in learning science, and that's what they focus on. So they try to help individuals, particularly in their first year, and they also will link up with our minority student organizations, BALSA and LALSA, and help them as well, and do a particular program for them if they want a particular program. But there are 3 exceptional individuals there that if you're struggling, or even before you start struggling, I really encourage this in orientation, to just make a weekly appointment. And there's 3 of them. They're all excellent. But typically you'll make an appointment with one of the 3 and develop a relationship. And if you do that on a weekly basis, they can help you with how to study. They can look at your writing. They can look at your outlines. And it's really having your own personal tutor. Now, most students don't take advantage of this. And that's because a lot of people are consumed with trying to protect the appearance of how smart they are. And so instead of working on actually how smart they will become, because that's what matters, how smart are you going to be at the end of the 3 years? Nobody cares how smart you are when you walk in the door. We care about how smart you are at the end of the 3 years. And if you keep your mind on that and work with academic support each week, and you just know that the key here is to improve every day, every week, every month, every year, if that's your focus, then you'll really get everything out of it that you came here for.
And I think I would just add also that our faculty are very, very accessible. They all have open door policies, of course, when we're all here on campus. They too will know you by name. Very often you'll see faculty members coming out of class and walking across campus, and they've got 3 or 4 students following with them, asking questions. The faculty is great about sending out practice questions for students to do. So in addition to academic support, our faculty are very, very accessible for our students.
Thank you, Dean Seepley and Dean O'Keefe. Next question, I believe, is more for Dean Lucas Ross. What kind of support does Career Development Office offer for students after graduation? And what about while taking the bar exam?
You do not want to be looking for a job while you're prepping for the bar exam. So that is first and foremost, because if you do not have a job offer in hand by graduation, the best way to get a job is to pass the bar exam. While we are always accessible to graduates, and that is always, meaning always, as long as you need us. I have graduates from 2003 coming back and seeking our assistance. We do suggest that when you're bar prepping, you focus solely on bar prep. That being said, after the bar exam, I personally reach out to the class of graduates that had just graduated to offer resources designed for those who are searching for their first job. We offer a live job search webinar. It's in the evenings for 6 weeks from mid-August until the end of September, each week focusing on a different area of the postgraduate job search. We provide opportunities with local employers. We allow our graduates who are going to remain local to put their resume in what we call a resume book, and we send out a notice to our local employers that we work with. letting them know we have an exceptional group of students who just graduated. If you're looking for an attorney, we have a resume book that you can review, and then we send that to the employers. We ask our recent graduates to let us know if they are still looking for a job, because then we send out job blasts to them. We connect graduates with other alumni in their field of practice or in their geographic area if they are looking for a job, to help the alumni speak to the recent graduates about opportunities in that area and networking. We provide counseling, again, whenever graduates need it. We provide opportunities to look at application materials, resumes, cover letters for as long as our graduates need it. And our graduates always have access to our online database, Simplicity, where we keep all of our job postings.
Thank you, Dean Lucas Ross. Dean Milliron, I haven't heard from you in a little bit, so I'm going to give this next one to you. If I'm not Catholic, would I find it hard to fit into the culture at Ave Maria? That's from an anonymous attendee.
In my opinion, no. I think the question was posed to the dean, and I'm going to kind of offshoot for a second as to what makes us strong, and I'm going to speak to the community aspect of it. I'm going into my, I've completed 16 years coming up shortly at the law school, and part of the beauty of being at the law school and what has caused me to stay at this job so long is the community feel of it. And when I started, I guess I wasn't going to answer this question because it's a long answer to a shorter question. When I started at the law school, I was not Catholic. I had been raised Methodist. And my children, who are now, 19 and 22, were kind of raised in the law school community. They played baseball, and some of the students that have come along have been baseball players that were in the minor leagues and worked with my sons, and I've gotten to know students. Some of the former students are my friends. I go and visit and have go out to dinner, etc. with them. So I think, and everybody is coming at it from a different perspective. Some of the students are Catholic and are very devout in their Catholic faith, and some are not. There have been students that have converted like I did once we moved down, and I'll tell the story when we come to orientation about what happened in that process and why what led me to convert. But I firmly believe that part of the mission of the law school is not to just squarely put itself amidst Catholics and only Catholics. We are supposed to engage and show the beauty of faith and reason and the Catholic intellectual tradition, so that we can have more people embrace the beauty of the religion. And I think the philosophy behind it. I know that's a long answer to a short question, and there is a lot of students. I don't know what our percentage is. I think it's 60% Catholic, but there's a lot of students of all faiths, and we've had a lot of students of all faiths throughout the years.
Yeah.
And Monsignor, who's our chaplain and our spiritual leader here on campus, who's a wonderful, wonderful priest and person, and he's just he's just a wonderful person. But I've heard him in speaking to students, and it's a quote from, and I don't remember which pope, but in other words, what he says is that we are not here to impose our religious beliefs, but rather to propose them. So, certainly we welcome students who are not Catholic are welcome to attend Mass. We have Mass twice a day here on campus. So you're absolutely welcome, and we're happy to have you participate. I think, as the dean said, it's just important to realize that, it is our mission and we aren't going to change. So if you struggle with that, you might have, some difficulty. If you're open to it and you want to be in a very tight-knit, close community that values faith and human dignity, then this is the place for you, for sure.
And I will add one last thing to that, because I was a student at Ave, and I'm not Catholic, I'm Christian. And to me, the difference it made was that the values are there. And the values are the same no matter what your faith is. And that's at the core of it. And that's the foundation of the school. And that's what promotes the community on campus. And that is what I really appreciated as a student. I was overwhelmed by the fact that my peers were willing to help me, and just the overall sense of community on campus was something I was not expecting. You hear all these stories about law school and how competitive it is and even hostile at times. And I mean, it's still going to be competitive, just that's the nature of law school, but you don't experience that hostility that you hear about in these horror stories from law school. So I think that ultimately our Catholic values, Christian values, promote community on campus. And that, in my opinion, is what makes a difference. So the next question is, if someone has been admitted for fall 2020, can they delay their start year to spring or fall 2021? Do you know, Keith?
So that would be me. So we don't have a spring start. We do have a May or an August start. So if you've been accepted for fall 2020, deferrals are granted only in very extreme and extraordinary circumstances. And the reason is that, every year our admissions criteria, it changes. Scholarship also changes because, year to year, the scholarship pool can be different. So really, if you've accepted for 2020, you're pretty much locked in for that. If it doesn't work for whatever reason and you don't, your situation doesn't warrant a deferral, we certainly strongly suggest that you reapply for the following year. It's all likelihood if you got in this year, you'll get in next year. But it's really on a case-by-case basis and very specific. And I would encourage you to reach out to me directly with that inquiry.
Dean O'Keefe, while I have you on, I have another admissions question. This is from Maria. Maria would like to know, would you accept the July LSAT results, or would that be too late?
So this is a really interesting question because I saw it pop up on the Q&A. So traditionally, I would say no, July would have been too late because those results typically have not come back until after our program of law has started and after you would have matriculated. Now this year with the virus and everybody, on lockdown and LSAC doing the LSAT Flex, the exam that they're running on May 18th, we will have the decisions June 5th, which is very, very fast turnaround. So depending on how that July exam is structured and when they believe that the results will be in, will determine the answer to that question. So it's a little too early to tell. I think we have to watch for guidance from LSAC to see how that's going to work. But essentially, we have to have the scores before you matriculate. So even if it's within a couple of days, we can work miracles and we can work really quickly and around the clock, but I need to be able to get those scores prior to our initial date of matriculation and start date of class.
Thank you, Dean O'Keefe. This next question is from Kristen. Kristen would like to know approximately how large is each graduating class?
I can address that. So it's been about 75, but over the past 6 years, we've increased every year. So this year, we'll probably bring in 115. We brought in 109 last year. Year before, we brought in 96. So it grows every year. We try to grow about 5 to 10 students a year. First, we focus on improving our quality. So the last 6 years, we've improved at least 1 LSAT point at each quartile every year. And we'll do that again this year. But now we're at a stage where we are also trying to increase our quantity a little bit each year. So I would say, over the next couple of years, we're going to have 75 to 80 students graduate.
Perfect. Thank you, Dean Seepley. The next question is from an anonymous attendee. Once you are admitted, what is the process to obtain your fall 2020 schedule for classes, and how much time in advance can you get an idea of your weekly schedule?
So fall 2020, we'll be sending out all of that information starting probably late June, early July. We'll have the schedule will already be set for the fall. It'll depend on which section you're assigned to, whether it's the A section or B section. It may vary slightly, but typically your schedule is going to be 8 in the morning until or it can be, say, 8 in the morning until about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, depending on which schedule you have, whether it's Schedule A or Schedule B. But we will give you plenty of notice on that, and we will be in touch with you in the coming weeks leading up to the fall start. So we'll get you that information, and you'll get everything that you need. Have no fear.
All right, this one is also an admissions question. How long can we expect to receive a decision after we complete a phone interview, and what can we expect from an interview? It's a good question.
It is a good question. So again, we are working pretty quickly on the files. And so if you've had an interview, I would say probably within, well, and it depends. If you're interested in summer start, obviously we're pushing those through quickly because of the timing, and then the fall. So I would say probably within 2 weeks, you'll have a decision, probably sooner. I would say probably 10 days. What can you expect in an interview? So again, it's kind of like the personal statement. You know, it's an opportunity for us to get to know you better and for you to get to know us a little bit better, to ask questions. You know, again, the application is so limited in the information that we can get from you that this is, and it's an opportunity for you as much as it is for us, right? So you have the opportunity to ask, you know, Tabby or Danielle or me, whoever it is that's doing the interview. You have the, you know, the ability to ask us questions about the school as well. So it's definitely not one-sided. And I would say, in fact, Tabby and I were just talking about this the other day. It's really meant as a conversation. It's not that we're going to get you on the phone and we're going to grill you with a bunch of questions. So definitely it's an opportunity for both sides. It's not anything that I would fear. You know, be honest, be yourself, and just look forward to a great chat with one of us.
Thank you, Dean O'Keefe. Yeah, the interview process is actually my favorite part. We were talking about that the other day because there's only so much you can tell about a person based on what's on paper, and it's kind of putting a human being behind those numbers and all of those words. So it's a great chance to get to know you, and like Dean O'Keefe mentioned, for you to ask questions and get to know us a little bit better too. Okay, so this next question is also an admissions question. Sorry, Dean O'Keefe, I'm making you talk a lot today. What's the average LSAT acceptance score?
The average. So this year, as the dean said, we are working to increase our numbers. So this year, our median, we are striving for a 147. We keep, as I said, pushing that up each and every year. So now 148, am I getting with this year? The median?
No, 149.
149. How did I get that wrong? 149.
147 will be the 25th percentile.
That's it. Sorry.
149 will be the median, and then the 75th percentile will probably be 152.
That I get, yeah. He's right. I wasn't thinking straight. So anyway, that gives you, that's our goal of what we're looking for this year.
Thank you, guys. All right, we're down to 2 questions. We have about 13 minutes left. Make sure to put your questions in before the end of the Q&A. So the last 2 questions. Is there an on-campus housing available for the fall term?
Yes, although we fill up every year with our housing, it's very popular. The housing actually is very nice. It's nicer than what you expect. And so it does fill up every year. You can get on. Last year we filled up in May for the fall. Whether we'll fill up in May, again, I don't know. That last year was the first time I've seen it fill up that quickly. Usually we don't fill up until June, beginning of July. But once you deposit, then you can get on the housing list, and depending on what kind of room you want, or if you've got a family, if you're asking for a villa, so it depends on the situation. But right now we have room. Okay,
and last questions for Dean O'Keefe. Oh, we have more questions popping up. Good. So what determines the renewal of the scholarship each year? And this is from Kristen.
So the renewal of did you want to talk about that, Dean Seapley?
I can. So if you get a 2.667 or better, then you keep your scholarship. If you drop below 2.667, then you lose your scholarship. And you lose it, you lose it. 2.667 represents, it's our it's our mandatory median for our required courses. But what it ends up being is it ends up representing about the bottom 40% of the class. And then when you figure other things, it ends up being, you can go online and look at the percentage of students that lose their scholarship. It's about a third. You know, and we do this because we're trying to really raise the academic rigor of our school. So if you want to keep your scholarship, you do have to work hard, because you do need to keep your GPA at a 2.667 or above. If you are 2.667 or above, you don't have to do anything. You keep your scholarship. You've got that scholarship for all 3 years.
Perfect. Okay. This question's about the sports complex. So Dean Siebel, I feel like you're going to want to answer this one. I know this isn't the most relevant question, which is why I held out, but do you have a physical fitness center? This is from an anonymous attendee. My research online has yielded mixed results.
Yes, we do. In fact, if you take Tabby gives a really quick and great campus tour. Unfortunately, it's locked down to everybody, so she doesn't go into the facility, but she walks in. So we have a 3v3, an official 3v3 AstroTurf area for soccer, although it can be used for Frisbee football. You know, you can lay on it and read a book, yeah, but it's cool. It's and again, we opened this up and then the virus hit and we shut it down. But it's lit, so we can actually play on the AstroTurf field at night. Then next to that is 2 basketball courts that are covered, and it's just a gigantic area. It covers 2 basketball courts, and then it has area surrounding both of those basketball courts. One is lined only for basketball. We call it the Kelleher Court because a local firm here put their name on it, Kelleher firm. And the other one is lined for basketball as well as pickleball. Pickleball is tennis for old people, but it's becoming extremely popular, and it really, Naples is the capital for pickleball, the world capital, literally. The world championships are held here in Naples. It has sleeves that we can clip in volleyball poles for the volleyball net, so we can do volleyball net as well. Then you go into the facility itself that is enclosed under air. It's 500 square feet. We have a spin studio that also has a punching bag, and the spin bikes can be moved back really easy to make that an aerobic area or a boot camp area. It's got music in there, and we run a software program that when you're doing a spinning program, you can see your output and you can see where you rank on a leaderboard. And then we have aerobic equipment and strength equipment in the open area, and then we have 2 locker rooms for men and women, well, 1 each, 2 total. That has 3 showers, and it has lockers in there for day use. And then we have 2 administrative offices, and we have a director of wellness and fitness, Heidi Roderick, who is excellent, just fantastic. We'll run group fitness throughout the week, and obviously the students can use the fitness center anytime between the hours aren't really in my head because, again, we closed it down pretty quick after we opened it, but I think it's 6 to 11 o'clock at night, 6 in the morning, 11 o'clock at night. And the students can just card in and use the facility.
Okay. Next question is from an anonymous attendee. Could you elaborate a little bit about the difference between Schedule A and Schedule B? Also, is that determined randomly, or do students get any input?
I guess I can speak. You want to speak to that one? Go ahead.
I was just going to start it and then hand it over to you. So the Schedule A and Schedule B is done randomly by our registrar, and it doesn't vary that much over the course of the week, but I'll let Dean Milliron talk about the actual schedule.
And I have to apologize, I'm being video bombed, and the only reason the kitty cat is in the room with me is because my husband, who also happens to be a professor, is holding trial right now. So we have Professor Scrufferson with us here today. So Schedule A and Schedule B, I work very hard to try and keep them even. So let's say that, you know, property in section A is on 8 o'clock one day, then it'll likely flip-flop so that the other section starts at 8 a.m. And then when the schedules go later in the day, I try to make it so that, you know, there's different days that one's getting out later than the other. And I think right now for the fall, the latest is 3:30, 4 o'clock. And that could be adjusted because we're having a few things coming up at faculty meetings that may adjust the schedule. And there are a couple of days where you get out earlier, but I'm going to give a caveat. Even if you get out earlier, it doesn't mean that you should be doing other activities other than maybe doing a short workout. You probably should be utilizing the library on those days. So there's flexibility during the day, but you do have classes as a 1L. Your class schedule is pretty full, particularly Monday through Thursday.
Just to add to that, so essentially the way the scheduling works, when we bring in the class, it's around, as the dean said, 110, 115. And then what happens is that gets split into two, so that we have two different sections, just because we need to have smaller sections to teach the doctrinal classes. And so then you'll be with that section for the year, going through you know, property and contracts. And then what we do is we take those groups and we pare it down even further for your RWA or lawyer, legal analysis, research, and writing class, so that you'll be with a smaller group there again for that type of class. And the reason is because that's so hands-on. There's a lot of writing that goes with that. There's a lot of one-on-one meetings with the professors as you turn in drafts. So those sections are typically around, you know, 15. So the class starts out at the 110, 115, and then we pare it down. And the same for summer start. You know, summer start, you're going to be with the one cohort for the bigger classes. And then again, we are going to split that down into the smaller, more manageable sections for your lawyer legal research class.
Perfect. Okay, we're getting a few more questions in. We do have 3 minutes remaining, so please, if we don't get to your question, feel free to contact the Office of Admissions and we will answer them for you, or put you in touch with someone who can answer anything that we don't know the answer to. So this next question is, if we're offered an interview, will the admission committee decision be based on the phone interview or the LSAT score, or both? I'm registered to retake the LSAT.
So we do a holistic review of your application and we look at everything. We look at LSAT, we look at your GPA, we look at interview notes, we look at your personal statement. So we take a look at everything. So again, it's a means for us to find out more about you than the application is giving us. So but we take into account everything.
Perfect. All right, final question. If a student already has a job in the legal environment, do you find it very common that attending law school will provide access to better opportunities and the student would prefer to change jobs for the summer to gain more different knowledge, perhaps in different areas of the law? Could it be more difficult to obtain a competitive pay rate once in law school, or does it help if you have prior work experience?
There's a lot in that question, and I'm not exactly sure what the context is, but I can probably speak to it the best. You know, I think that having experience in a law office, particularly the one that we get the most is paralegals, it doesn't help you in law school and sometimes can hinder, because law school is a lot broader and a lot more difficult than the things that you do as a paralegal. That answers that question, but there was a question with regard to employment. You know, you may very well stay at that place because you have an environment that they're helping you get through law school and understanding that you're going through law school, and it's a good place for you to go back to. That being said, we are pretty competitive here in Southwest Florida in terms of obtaining jobs. And you may find that you were at a law firm that's doing, you know, foreclosures, let's say, but you get into law school and business organizations in business law, corporate law, really interest you, or you know, disability law really interests you, and you want to head down that track, you may find that after studying some of the courses in law school or finding things that are more interesting to you, that you are interested in a different area and want to move on. I think that, like I said, it changes the way you think. I think that you keeping your mind open, but it's nice to have a place that gives you at least a foundation.
All right, it looks like it's 5 o'clock. We've reached the end of the Q&A. Thank you, Deans, for participating. And we will probably be hosting another one of these. So if you didn't get your question asked this time around, you can message us, like I said, or you can join us for our next Q&A. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Take care.